Alrighty, let's get this thing started. I've been struggling with my placement yet again of where to put everything, because I'm always trying to come up with a better method. Now last week I did the microphone wrong. I had it wired, I had it selected, but yet I wasn't actually using the microphone I was wearing. It was using the one built into the computer. So I believe I've got that corrected, and I wanted to tell you guys that that was a goof on my part, and hopefully won't have that problem. Now something changed with this software, because now it won't let me actually put a title of the show, and I don't know why. Oh, that's kind of neat. They've put a new thing in the corner of my screen. I like it. But, like I said, I can't put a title for the show. So what is our show about? So let me switch cameras here for a sec. Nah, let you guys look at the reef a little bit longer. I'm going to assume from all these comments, no one's complaining there's no sound, because no one has said I can't hear you. It's been a very busy day over here today. Did some cleaning on the tank. And I answered some emails. And I tried to set up for the live stream. Okay, good. You can hear me. And apparently you can hear me no matter where I walk around to. So that's a good sign. So here we are. There's no real topic for today specifically. It's a lot of ceiling. Let's pull this down a little bit. I had, I always have ideas, but then, my week is so busy that when I finally, it's time for the live stream, it's like I didn't have any time to prepare something really good this week. And that kind of bothers me. So today will be Q&A, but I want to talk about fish traps, because I just built one for a customer. He asked for a smaller one that was on my website. And so I said, well, how small? And he said, well, I need it to fit inside. I think it was a 20-gallon long that he's using for quarantine or hospital. And he wanted the ability, so he asked me to put the sound up a little bit louder. Let's try this. Well, hang on, let me do this instead. It might be better. Otherwise, it might get blown out. Crank this up. So, okay, 1, 2, 3. What do you guys think? I know I got to wait 20 seconds for you guys to give me a response. So I'll take a sip of coffee. Is it still too low, or did I get it right? Trying to shrink this window, and it doesn't want to shrink very much. It's odd. There we go. Now I can do that, because I don't need a giant window to see me. I just need to make sure I'm in the frame somewhere. Still too low. A little bit too low. Okay. Well, I can turn it up more. How about now? Sorry, I don't mean to cough in your ear and all that. But if, you know what, you might be giving me low audio comments from 2 minutes behind. I don't know. My other choice is to just turn this up louder on here. I get a little bit nervous that I'll go too loud. Alrighty. Let's just get into it. So I wanted to talk about fish traps. Can you hear me okay now? I've made a certain type of fish trap that sits inside your tank, and it's kind of big. But people like me with a large tank, you need a large fish trap. But there's a lot of people with smaller tanks. And so, as I was trying to say before, someone asked me if I could somehow make a smaller fish trap, and so I came up with something smaller. So this is the new one, and I posted pictures of this last night on Facebook. And so the trap is designed to be used either direction. So in theory, it could go like this in your aquarium, and then when the fish goes in, it just closes the door behind them. So it can swim in on one side or the other side of the door, and you just pull on the string and you close the door and the fish is inside, and then you would take it out of the tank and go pour it into a bucket or another tank. Now, The reason I'm saying go either way, it can go this direction, or it can go this direction. No, actually, I'm sorry. It would have to go this way in your tank. And the reason being is because you need the door to be sitting horizontal. Now, if it's sitting on the bottom of the tank, you know, just sitting at the bottom like in a system that was, let's just say, had no sand, the door would stay up because this lever is sitting on the substrate, on the glass or on the sand. And then when you're ready to close the door, you would just pull the string up. So it pulls up. And so I was asking people, what kind of size would you like? Would you like it to be even smaller than this? This one here is 10 by 5 by 5. And, you know, but there's people with like biocubes. This would take up the entire cube. So they need something probably half the size. So I'm trying to figure out what's the sweet spot. And then, of course, like I said, you know, you have different ways of using it. Either you can use it this way or you can use it this way, depending on what kind of fish you're trying to catch. Like if you're trying to catch a mandarin or a blenny or something like that, it would swim right in very easily. But a copper band or a tang would need to be in something taller. And so I'm thinking maybe it should go taller. Now, people are asking how to connect it, and I would just want to let you know the easiest way to connect this on the side of the tank is with a cleaning magnet. Just pinch it between the glass and the tank and just stick it in there. Because a fish trap isn't forever. It's something you're going to use for a certain amount of minutes until you're done. And you could put the trap in your tank in advance for 2 or 3 days and just let it sit there for the fish to get used to it. Or you can just put it in the day you want to do it. And then the other question people always say is, well, how do I get food into it to make the fish go in? Well, there's a few methods I've thought of. If I were to put a hole in the top, the problem is if you want to run it this direction, you've got the hole facing the wrong way. And I don't want to put holes all over it because I want you to be able to lift it up with a fish inside and full of water instead of water pouring out of a hole. So I was thinking that you could just take a turkey baster and get some frozen food, thaw it out, suck it up in the baster, and then squirt it into the trap where it just piles up in this corner. Or you could put a frozen cube or two in there. Or you could put a clip on there with nori inside here on this end and then put the trap into your tank. So there's a few ways to get food into it in the first place once it's in the tank. And then you can just stand back and pull on the string to close the door. And I include a fishing line that's like 15 feet long, so you can actually get really far away from the tank so you're not spooking the fish. And in the past, when I've had to catch a fish, it wasn't really hard. It's not like you're going to spend hours doing it. Typically, you could catch it between 5 and 20 minutes. Just depends on what's going on and how skittish the fish are. And you have to keep in mind, too, if it's already a shy fish that doesn't want to swim into a trap, because, it never comes out anyway, the odds are it's not going to go in your trap. But, there's a chance. So it would just be something that you would set in, and you would, just like a fisherman goes out to the ocean trying to catch a fish or a lake, they try not to spook the fish, and they try to lure them with some bait, and they try different bait until they finally catch the fish they want. So I wanted to ask you guys, if you had an optimal size that fits your aquarium, I would love to hear what sizes you're thinking of for your situation. Now, there's other ways to catch a fish besides this that doesn't cost you money at all. And I know, sure, some people will actually post a picture or put a link to something on Google where you just take a 2-liter bottle and you cut off the end and invert it. And that way you're able to have the fish swim in, but they can't get back out. Yes, you can definitely do that, and it'll cost you maybe $1 because you have to buy the drink. But another trick is to lower the water level in the tank so low that there's only a little bit of water in the left, and you can just scoop it out with a net. If there's a lot of rock in the way, you might have some problems there, and you might have to remove rock and rock and rock until you finally get down to just substrate, a little bit of cloudy water, and scoop the fish out, and then refill the tank immediately. So that's another way to get it. But I just wanted to talk about this type of fish trap specifically because I'd like to put some different options on my website of something that's kind of standard. I like the way that one came out. So I'll be continuing to work on fine-tuning it. But I'd love any kind of feedback or input you have. I tried to address some of the questions that have come up, like how do you hold it on the side of the tank? How do you put food in it? Should it be taller? And that's a valid point. Like a tang is a tall fish. So you may need the trap to be narrow but taller so the fish can go in easily. And then the question is, how deep does the trap have to be to catch the entire fish? Now, the reason I like this door where it pivots in the middle like that is that you're not dealing with a lot of friction. You're not dealing with a lot of resistance. You're only closing half a door because it's in the middle point. So it just pivots right on that point. And so it's pushing, pulling. And the way I see it in my head is that a fish will swim in. And as they go in face first, before they can even think of backing up, the door comes from behind their tail and closes them in. And then you just have to basically keep tension on your string as you get closer to the tank. And then just reach in and tilt the box upward and lift it out. And if you can't just, like, let's say the fish is longer, you can just tilt it slightly so the water stays in. The trick is to keep the water off the floor. So I just wanted to show you that and see what you think. Let me tell my best friend I'm live streaming. All right. Any other questions? A mirror. Would the mirror bring them into the trap, or would it just make them fight each other to the death? Yeah. I'm curious about the mirror idea. I don't know what that would do. Has anyone done it? It is just too hot today. Outside, the weather is heading toward 90 degrees, and I've been running around this morning, so I'm too warm. I'd love to cool off a little bit. Vivid Creations making a suggestion. I'm going to stick it on the screen. Add a few cleats along the outside of the trap to allow it to be to easily hold down when you pull it out. Cleats. Don't know. I'll give that some thought. All right, let me tackle a question here for you. George asks, can you talk about diatoms and what's going on? Now, your tank may not have diatoms. What you may be dealing with is mulm, M-U-L-M, and that's basically a detritus sitting on the sand because you're saying it's like a dust. And if you take your hand and wave over the sand or a credit card or something like that, and it just kind of rises and sinks, again, that's mulm. It's not diatoms. Diatoms are a little bit more sticky. They tend to stick to the stand and stay there. And mulm is something you want to export. So when you're running your filtration, you're running filter socks, you're doing a gravel vac to siphon the sand bed, you're trying to suck out that dust. It shouldn't be, and you said that your nitrates and phosphate are nice and low, so it could be mulm. So for example, do you happen to be running biopellets? Because biopellets tend to make those happen in a tank. By the way, back to mirrors, because someone asked about putting mirrors in a tank. They actually have mirror acrylic. So you can just put a piece of acrylic on there that has the mirror effect, but it won't affect the water. I'm thinking it's probably a film on one surface of the acrylic. And again, it's not something you're leaving in the tank, long term. It's in there for the purpose of catching the fish. I feel like we're going to have nothing to talk about today. I've answered the questions in the Google Doc. All right. Someone asked about how do I keep my fish nets. I don't know what that means. So I'm going to, not bio balls, biospheres. If you have some nets, rinse them out, put them up, keep them dry until ready to be used. If you are trying to avoid getting pests or fish disease into your main tank, don't use the same net in your hospital tank that you use in your display tank. You don't want to transfer any possibility of fish disease from one system into another. So it would be important not to move them back and forth. So that would be my recommendation. Van asks if I would hook up my Clarisea on the live stream one of these weeks. I am about to replace that sump. That's what I'm working on this weekend, is cutting out and starting to glue my new sump. And when I glue it, I'm going to glue it to hold the Clarisea device in my new sump. And so once that is installed, you'll be able to see it. And it probably won't be a live stream. It'll probably be an edited video. That way it's clean and easy to see, versus a lot of times on live streams, I just feel like, it's kind of herky-jerky and I'm bouncing around with the camera, and that's no fun. Philip says, have you do you still have a nitrate issue? And as far as I know, I do. I haven't tested my water yet today, so I still need to do that. But last time I checked my nitrates, they were probably between 20 and 30. And I'd like them to be lower, but you know what? I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, why do I even care? Because my reef is happy, and I should probably just let it go. My main reason was I want to lower them down so I could add some more fish, and I didn't want to put more fish in if I already have a nitrate problem. And then he asked, would I consider going back to biopellets? I would, but I kind of what I'm doing in this situation, or what I've been doing for pretty much the last couple of years, is trying different products to see what they do and if they work. And so I wanted to see if it was possible to use the brick, or can you use Nopox. And so these different products I'm putting in the tank, I'm wanting to see if they work as advertised. And the reason I want to know that is, number one, it would be great if it worked. And number two, I'd like to be able to share my experience with others when they ask the question, well, I'm thinking about using Nopox, did it work for you? And I can't just say I've never used it, because that just seems like such a cop-out answer. And so I'm trying various products to see what they do and hoping to say, yes, it worked fantastic. And that's always my goal with anything I get. Whatever I buy and I try it on my tank, I'm really hoping for a good glowing review to say it's awesome. But sometimes I try stuff and it just doesn't work. And that doesn't mean it won't work for everyone, it just means it didn't work for me with my tank. Adam asks, is it important to have a biopellet reactor go straight into the skimmer, mine are at opposite ends? Yes, it is. But the nice thing is the output of your biopellet reactor is usually a hose barb connection. You run tubing and just run long tubing all the way to the front of your skimmer. So where the skimmer is drawing in water, you have the tubing right here, and so it's drawing in the export from the biopellet reactor. And yes, that's very important. And that will help reduce some of the mold that happens inside a display tank. Do you have a PMK for your apex? No, I do not. I had to think, what does PMK stand for? Out of all the apex stuff I talked about last week, that is a device I've not purchased. I actually own par meters, and so I'm able to just stick it in the tank occasionally and do some measurements, and that gives me some numbers. I can tell you usually down at my sand bed, depending on which spot of the tank I'm measuring, it's going to be between 150 and 200 par. There's corners of the tank, like the far corner near the anemone cube, it's going to be more like 80, super low there. But I've had chalices live down there, and zoanthids, and what else is down there? Duncans. They're not getting much light. They're just getting some. It's not like the SPS that are dominating, getting all the light. When I replace the sump, I'm going to, of course, clean up my refugium completely. And I may switch out the substrate to something different this time, or I may just go shallower. So instead of it being a 4-inch sand bed in there, I might just make it 1 inch again. And that way I can, again, have clean sand, less nutrients in the system, and in theory, remove a potential spot for nitrate. The other spot that I really want to siphon is the sand bed of the anemone cube. And that's a tricky one because there's a lot of anemones in my way. But I would love to get in there with a gravel vac and just siphon all the poop out of there from all those fish that poop in there every single day, because it's a trapped ecosystem of 5.5-year-old sand bed. Jay asks, my tank is 4 months old and I've tried some SPS. ACANs, not an SPS, it's an LPS. Monty, yes it is an SPS. And I'm experiencing STN. The parameters are great, the temperature's around 78 degrees. I've got T5s and LEDs. So any advice? STN typically is going to be from alkalinity swings. So, or it's shadowing. I mean, that can happen too. If you got little tiny frags in the bottom of its STNing, which means slow tissue necrosis, it's just slowly dying from the bottom up, very, very gradually over a period of days and weeks. That could be there's too much shade on the base and so it's suffering. Or it could be that the alkalinity, like I said, it's bobbing all over the place. And you're going to want to really dial in your alkalinity as precise as you can. So for example, if you're trying to keep it at 8.5, then every single day it should measure 8.5. I mean, that's your goal. And if it's 8.5 this week, and it's 10 next week, and it's 6 the week after that, and it's 7 the week after that, and it's 11 the week after that, your SPS will do things that you won't like. ACANs won't have STN problems. Typically, they will have brown jelly disease issues. So it's really important to get that straight in there. Kevin says, would you use a turf scrubber to lower nitrates? And that's a good question, because a friend of mine, he went ahead and he created a new algae turf scrubber, different from the ones I've seen on the market. And his name is Jason. And he has made a turf scrubber that is a box with lights inside, that while it's running, you can pull the drawer out of it and the water just tumble down inside, and you can deal with the screen and then shove the drawer back in. That was so neat. I was like, okay, that one I like. Because of the turf scrubbers I've seen so far, usually you've got the water dripping down and you've got some lights. You got to figure out a way to install it somewhere on your system where those lights won't get wet. So in other words, they put it on top of their sump, because you can't put it in the sump, because as the water rises, it'll hit the lights and short it out and trip the breaker. Well, and then if you've got it up high on top of your sump so it can't get flooded, and you have to remove the top, it's kind of hard. So what do you have to do? You have to occasionally like disconnect it from the plumbing, remove it to the sink or something, and now open the top and lift the screen out to clean it off and put it back. And this file cabinet system where you pull the drawer out and go to the sink seems kind of brilliant. And that one's kind of an expensive one. I think it was ranging somewhere $800 to $1,000 for it. But he was talking about how it lowers nitrate. And it's interesting to me. You know, I've got a healthy refugium, and, you know, hell, I've got a bunch of healthy fish and corals. So I don't even, like I said, I don't even know why I'm worrying about nitrates at all. I should probably just let it go and move on with my life and quit sweating it. Rogue Aquariums, thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Let me switch cameras here for a second, give you guys something else to look at besides me. Philip Caldwell suggests or said that people in Europe are using calcium reactor media as their substrate in the refugium. And I just watched a video from Apex, or from Neptune Systems. It was one of their live streams, and Paul's reef tank, his substrate is calcium reactor media. And I thought that was pretty brilliant. Let me see here. Okay, let's, I see, we're talking about, let's switch gears for a second and talk about cyano. Because cyanobacteria is a thing that happens to lots of people's tanks. It'll happen to my tank at some point too. It's seasonal. And so as it grows in your tank, you may want to decide, do you want to deal with removing it right now? Or do you want to see if you can make it fade away? Or is it even a big, huge outbreak? Or is it just a minor little thing? So when it comes to treating your tank, let me grab something. Okay. So when you're treating your tank, you could use Red Cyano RX, I sell it, or you can use ChemiClean. And to be honest, they might be the exact same ingredient. I really don't know. No one tells me this stuff. But you're going, and this is the thing, I read everyone's opinions on how to use it. And I guess I should say I have an opinion too. I have a method that works. And it basically follows the instructions to the letter. But the companies keep changing their instructions a little bit, and I'm not a huge fan of the way they're changing their instructions. So let me just tell you what I recommend for removing cyanobacteria. Siphon out as much as you can from the tank before you even treat the tank. So if you have blankets of it on the sand bed, you want to turn off the pumps, scrape it together into a pile, and siphon that out, get rid of it. Or take a bowl and scoop it and get it out of your tank. Reduce its mass as much as you possibly can, especially if it's a huge outbreak. I mean, if it's just everywhere, on the rocks, on the walls, on the pumps, on the cleaning magnet, if it's everywhere, siphon everything out you can. Lots of manual work. And now you're down to what's left. And what you are doing by doing all this is you're disturbing the bacteria, which is a good thing to do in the first place. Then you're going to turn off your protein skimmer and you're going to turn off any carbon. You can keep your GFO running. and you're going to go ahead and put in your product as according to the instructions, the dosage amount they recommend for your water volume. And when it comes to water volume on your aquarium, it is the true water volume within the glass box. It is not going to be, oh, well, my tank is this big, so, and I've got this huge sump, so it's really this much water. I just had this conversation with a friend this morning, and he said, well, I've got a 75-gallon tank, but I've also got a 25-gallon refugium. And I said, no, you don't. And I said, I guarantee you, even with inside dimensions, you don't have that size refugium. And we measured it out, and it turned out to be 15.6 gallons internally. And then he says, yeah, well, there's some water in this other section. I'm like, yeah, okay. But even then, do you have sand and rock in your tank? And he says, yeah, I do. I said, well, then it's displaced. There's less water in the aquarium because of all the sand and rock that's taking up space within the box. And so I usually tell people, if your sump is made for your tank, if it's the right size for your aquarium, then whatever water's in that sump is basically the equivalent of what was pushed out of your tank from the sand and the rock. So if it's a 75-gallon aquarium with a sump, I'd say you have a 75-gallon liquid water volume system, and not more. And the tank's behind me. That's a 400-gallon right there, and that's a 60-gallon right there. Mathematically, that's 460, right? And then I have a sump underneath that has 80 gallons of water in it, which could hold 150 gallons. So you would say, oh, well, you got like 600 gallons. I'm like, no, I do not. I literally do not. I truly believe my total water volume of all three vessels, 400 gallon, 60 gallon, and sump, is 450 gallons of liquid volume. So I always dose my tank for 450 gallons of water. And if you're like, well, I don't know if I agree with that, it's length times width times height in inches divided by 231. And you can get a tape measure and you can start measuring internally and see how much space you have. Another thing you can do is you can actually drain out 5 inches of water from your tank, see how much that is, and then how many more inches of tank do you have left, and you can determine how much water is really in there. It's just not as much as you think, and if you're guessing high, you're overdosing. Okay, so back on track. We've dosed the right amount of ChemiClean or Red Cyano RX to remove the cyano, and now you just wait 3 days. That's all you got to do. Just wait 3 days. And after 3 days, if the cyano is completely gone, you can do a big water change, and you can go ahead and turn on your skimmer. If your cyano is still present, I would dose the tank again and wait 2 more days. So now you're up to 5 days. And then at this point, the stuff should be completely gone and dead. And now you can go ahead and you can do a huge water change, and then you're going to start up your skimmer. So during the process of running this chemical in your tank to kill off the cyanobacteria is a great time to do a deep soak of your skimmer and really clean it. You can take it outside because we're heading into the summer. You can let it run in vinegar inside a bucket and just let it clean itself and then get it completely clean. Now, this is the part I was talking about where I disagree with some of the directions I'm reading on some of these products these days. Some people say just keep the skimmer running without the cup because it's going to add air. And I just don't agree that that's the good way to go because number one, a skimmer overflowing even without a cup is a volcano and it makes a big mess. It's so much simpler to just get an air pump, air tubing, and an air stone and stick that in your display tank and just put in oxygen that way and get your skimmer cleaned up so it's ready for when you turn your when you're ready to do turn your skimmer back on. So don't have your skimmer on, turn it off, turn off the carbon, and you're gonna have to do a huge water change because if you don't do a huge water change, number one, you get this horrible algae outbreak, and don't ask me how I know this. But you do want to definitely remove a good portion of water, which could be 25% of your tank, and then turn on your skimmer, and there's a good chance that your skimmer is going to keep overflowing for a few hours. So as quickly as it overflows, just dump it into a barrel, dump it in a barrel, dump it in a barrel. And what you could even do is, instead of using RO water for top off, use salt water for top off, and let it replace the salt water that's being exported by the skimmer so quickly to where you can kind of make up for the lost water. Because you might, I'll take an example of an aquarium. I had a 280-gallon tank, and the skimmer overflowed nonstop, and I kept dumping it into a barrel. I actually set up barrels in a row because I was curious how much it would take, and I pulled out 14 gallons of skimmate in like 6 hours. So 14 gallons of water was collected by the cup, just looked like watery water, didn't look like anything special. And I just threw it away, and I put in 14 gallons of salt water to replace it, so my salinity did not change. All right, so that is my recommendation to you guys on that. And it's such a simple solution. And I know people say, well, I don't like using chemicals in my tank, or I want to turn off my lights for 3 days, or I want to increase my flow, or I want to feed less. Yeah, you can do all those things, but ChemiClean or Red Cyano RX will take care of it in 3 to 5 days, and your tank is back to something beautiful again. You didn't wait forever, and you didn't hurt anything. So I don't fear it. And if you have to use it 2 times a year, who cares? Who cares? Just use it. It's easy. Okay. Mojave says, I started to get Lobophora at the 8-month mark. Is it bad? Lobophora, it's an algae, right? And you know, we typically don't want algae in our display tank. I'm trying to remember what that one looks like. I think it's a brownish algae, right? Or a brownish bubble algae. So I would say that, you know, is it bad? No. I mean, it's going to probably become a pest you're not going to like. So removing it would be the way to go. And then Jay says, besides removing the rock, how do you get rid of glass anemones? Glass anemones or Aptasia can be killed off with different products. I even have a product right now I got from Frank's Tanks that's called F Aptasia. And you know what the F stands for. And he swears by it. He says it's amazing. And I tried it out in my tank, and it did kill some stuff. So yeah, seems to work. And he sells it online too. So that's a nice option. But I mean, there's Aptasia X from Red Sea. I believe people can still get Joe's juice. Other people use lemon juice. One guy told me years ago, which I never did, was use muriatic acid in a syringe. You can use vinegar. You can use an Aptaser, which was a device that zaps it with electricity. You can use a laser, which I've shown videos on, where you can zap it through the glass, which is great for the ones you can't reach. And but yeah, if you can scrape them off, that's usually the simplest solution. But it can be difficult if your rock work is all done and established. You can also add a copper band butterfly or a tilefish, both of those, or filefish. Will eat Aptasia, but it's hit or miss. They're not going to eat every last one of them. But my copper band's been pretty good about eating the pests, so I'm happy about that. Okay, Fun with Reefing says, I'm curious about your electricity bill. And see, that was kind of the topic I wanted to talk about today, but I didn't have any time to do my homework. So anyway, I'm curious about your electricity bill every month, especially in the summer. I asked because we got hit by a heat wave the past few weeks. My bill is around $400. My chiller ran almost nonstop because my sump is in the garage. All right, so let's ignore the dollar amount and let's just talk about electricity itself, because wherever you live, the rate that you're paying for electricity by the kilowatt hour is going to be different than somebody else. Where I live, my electricity is very inexpensive. And so what instead of saying I paid this much, which I can tell you, it's not a secret, my point is, how much power did you use? So in my situation, I used 1,981 kilowatts last month. And my bill is over there. And my dollar amount was $196. I keep my house around 71, 72 degrees all the time because I like to be comfortable. I don't like being hot, as you saw me complaining before. And it keeps the tank the right temperature, so I don't need to run a chiller. Now, you said that yours was in a hot garage. That's a problem. And it puts you in a... And plus, if the chiller's in the garage, the chiller is in a hot environment trying to cool something, and its compressor is working really hard against all the heat of the room. So that's like double duty. So you're going to want to find ways to reduce electricity consumption through equipment. And like the biggest energy hog on my tank, the only thing that pulls a truckload of power is my lights. And my lights are on all day long. And it's 1,200 watts of light that each bulb is running 6.5 hours a day. So you got 18 hours of light that I'm paying for. And that's the thing, I want to do the math. I want to plug in every single device into a kilowatt, which is this device that has a LCD display. And you plug your item in and you hit the watt button and it says how many watts it's pulling. And then you get out a piece of paper and you put down metal halide number 1, metal halide number 2, and you just go through the entire list of everything you own that has to do with your aquarium, including a chiller, return pump, heaters, lights, dosers, fans, moonlights, anything you plug in can be measured. And then you can determine how long is it running that wattage. Is it running like a heater? Does the heater run for 2 hours? Does it run 4 times a day? So there's 8 hours of heat you're paying for. And like this person said, his chiller, it's off my screen, but he said his chiller was running nonstop, and I'm not surprised. So there are going to be times where things are going to cost you a lot of money, and it's going to go up. Now, I told you my bill was $196, and that's the entire house. That's me working here, living here, doing laundry, cooking and baking foods, running the washer dryer, running Minion, which pulls a bunch of power to cut my acrylic work out. And there's an air conditioner unit in the workshop that runs all day long every day. And when summer really is here, it's going to run around the clock. I'll just keep it running. And so, yeah, those devices are going to add extra to your bill. But kilowatt hours, I tend to use here in normal months when the weather's kind of temperate, not crazy cold, not crazy hot, somewhere around 1,600 to 1,800 kilowatt hours. And then as we head into summer, I will be hitting somewhere around 2,400 kilowatt hours. I can go all the way up to like 3,600 kilowatt hours times my rate. Now my rate where I live, I'm in Texas, and we have something called deregulation, which California has, and I don't understand why it didn't work for California. And when they brought it to Texas, I was terrified because California was such a nightmare that I thought, oh my God, please don't bring it here. But of course, I had no choice. They just did it. But what they did was they made it to where you could choose the electricity provider instead of being just told, here's the guy you get, that's who you pay. And they made it where multiple companies could offer different rates. So originally in Texas here, everyone had to buy something called TXU electricity. And TXU basically said, this is what it costs, and we just paid. And I used to pay a lot more electricity on this same house that I'm in now, because I've been in this house for 20 years. And it was, I had bills of $400, $500. It was horrible. And then, of course, in the winter, it was less, thank God. But I was paying somewhere around 17 cents per kilowatt hour, and I had a 4-ton air conditioner unit outside on my house, which I later replaced. 10 years ago, I got a new AC that's only 2.5 tons. They said, why do you have a 4-ton on this little house? And I said, I don't know, it's what it came with. And they said, that's way overkill. We're going to put a smaller one. You're going to save electricity immediately every single month. And I was like, all right. And they did. And that has helped. So that was good. But the aquarium is on, and it's doing the exact same thing 365 days of the year. It's always got the same lights. It's always got the same heat. And it's always pretty much in the same temperature unless I were to make a change physically, like bump the thermostat up to 75 or something and leave it there, which I usually do not. I like my house to be cooler for comfort levels. Okay, so if you can shop around for a lower rate, like I was saying, TXU charges so much. The rate I'm paying right now is only 6.2. And last year it was 5.9. And the year before that, I had the most unbelievable plan. No one could believe it. It was it was 1.9 cents per kilowatt hour. It was crazy. So here was the deal. I went to the website called powertochoose.org, and I looked up my zip code, and it gave me the list of companies I could pick from. And this one company offered 1.9, and I was like, there is no way that's real. And I read all the fine print. I read all the addendums and the warnings, and basically the thing was you had to use between 1,000 and 2,000 kilowatts, anywhere in there. It was like 1,000 and then 19.99. If you could be in the middle of that, you're going to pay 1.9 cents per kilowatt hour. And I knew I could do that 2 times a year for sure. Spring and fall, I get 1 month where I barely run the AC and I don't have to run heat, and it's just, I can coast through there and get by cheaply. And so that company, I called them up and I said, is this real? What are you trying to do? What's the drawback? How are you screwing me? And they said, no, there's nothing. As long as you're between those two, you're fine. But if you're under it, or if you're over it, you're going to pay whatever it was. Let's say 6.4. I said, you know what? That's totally worth it. Sign me up. And I got a 12-month contract from them. And magically, we had the most mild summer that year. And my electricity for out of 12 months, 6 months of the 12 months, I was between those two numbers, and I get an electric bill for like $16 or $18 for the month, and I just laughed. I was just like, are you kidding me? And I'd post a picture on Facebook, and my friend's like, what did you do? Did you mess with the meter? I'm like, I did nothing. You can see the kilowatts I used. I've got this ridiculously unbelievable rate they offered me, and I said, yes, sign me up. So I even would call that electric company, and you know, people call up because they're going to complain about their bill, and I'd say, I just want to thank you for giving me an awesome bill this month, and I know you never get these calls, so I want to be sure to, give you guys a thank you. And they just kind of laugh. I'm like, it's insane. How can you give me a month's worth of electricity for $16? And they said, you got a great plan. I was like, yeah, I did. And then I said, how do I renew this for 5 more years? And they said, you don't. And guess what? The company went out of business. The following, I don't think I made 12 months. I think I was 11 months in. And I got a letter from whoever saying, you are being transferred to such and such for the next 30 days. And then you have to do a new contract. But we are honoring that price. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So yeah, I got away with 1 year with almost no electricity. It was fantastic. But there you go. Some people are talking about using solar power. And the thing is, because I live in Texas, I am the king of shade. I want as much shade on my property, and solar power needs sunlight. You need to have panels that are getting hit with the sun. And the only thing I could do is put panels out in the middle of my lawn, because my roof, my entire house is under giant oak trees. And I really hate cutting out any branches, because every bit of shade is a little bit less heat being pummeled on my roof, which is, of course, making my AC fight against. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. All right, so that was a long answer on electricity. It comes down to what you're using. And now, okay, let me, since we're on this topic and I have nothing else to talk about today, I can say this: insulate the hell out of your garage. My garage, that hasn't been used as a garage in a very long time, is a workshop. And about 3 years ago, when I purchased Minion and put her in there, I went ahead and I pulled off all the sheetrock off the wall, and I put all new insulation in there because I knew it was empty, and it was. It was the brick wall facing the sun, and it was just baking through the sheetrock and heating up the garage. And so I pulled off all the sheetrock, which was 3 sheets. It's not a big deal. It's 12 feet long, or maybe it was 4 sheets. And I put in brand new insulation in there, filled the wall up, and I put the new sheetrock up, and I added the AC unit, of course, to cool it. And I bought an insulated garage door. And that has made all the difference. I can literally go out there and it'll be like 105 degrees outside, and my workshop will probably be around 79 or 80. You know, it's a little bit warmer than inside here, but good enough. And it lets me, be 20 degrees cooler than outside to work, which I really do appreciate, of course. So, alrighty. Let me go to a new question. How long should I wait to turn off my skimmer with an application of fluconazole? I believe you're supposed to go skimmerless for 3 solid weeks. And I would check with some others on that one, because that is one I haven't had to do. I have not been in a situation where my tank needed me to dose it, so I haven't used it. But I've read quite a bit, but I forget stuff too. So rather than me giving you bad advice, I'm just going to say I don't remember everything, but I do know you turn off your skimmer the whole time and let it work its magic. And it takes about 3 weeks for it to kick that algae's butt. I also heard a while back that if you use triple the strength of fluconazole, it will get rid of bubble algae. So you could try that if you wanted to. All right. Kevin says, any chance of doing another video on the calcium reactor setup without a Neptune controller or any automated equipment? I saw you did one years ago. It was super helpful. You didn't see mine, I don't think, because I have yet to do my calcium reactor video. But I will tell you that I have, since 2004, had a calcium reactor, a pH controller, and the carbon doser, which is the regulator on the CO2 tank. And those 3 components working together is what's added my alkaline and calcium for 15 years. So you don't need the Apex for that part, but you can use an Apex. But I've actually had mine stand alone always. And I've only just this week incorporated mine into my Apex because I'm using Trident testing to determine when to let the calcium reactor trigger on and off. And I'm watching my numbers really closely. I'm actually watching my numbers every 6 hours. As soon as I get a report, I look and I go check on things to see where I'm at, because I would love to get that precisely dialed in. I'm really trying to keep my tank at 9.3 DKH. And I'd love to have a graph that just does this. Instead, mine kind of does this thing and goes down and goes up, and it's like, ugh. So I'm trying to program that, and that's a little tricky. But it's not a mandatory situation. Now, in the olden days, people would take a calcium reactor. I need to close a valve. I hear my RO system trying to turn on and off. All right, in the olden days, people would have just the calcium reactor and a CO2 tank with a regulator, and they would adjust that knob on the reactor, or they adjusted the knob coming out of the calcium, on the CO2 tank, or on the calcium reactor, they adjust the output, and that was all they had, nothing more. And when I got mine, I had someone tell me from day one, get a pH controller. And so I bought one because he told me to, and it was $100, and he said, you hook it up and it's set it and forget it. And he was 100% right. And so if you're gonna set up a calcium reactor, buy your CO2 tank, get your regulator that you want, and get the pH controller. And that way you can actually dial it into the exact number you like, and it will be a lot simpler to dial in than trying to do it without. It's a necessary piece of equipment, in my opinion, to make your life simpler. If you love testing water and you want to keep trying to tweak it for 23 days in a row, you can do that too. That's a little bit too hard. All right. Inventory King says, what is a good substitute for a yellow tang as far as algae eating goes? Well, instead of a yellow tang, maybe you could get a fox face. Fox faces love algae, but you don't want to get stung by one reaching in your tank. And another good worker tang is the coal tang. Those things are bristle-tooth tangs, and they love to clean the glass. If you don't clean your glass for a few days, you'll have lip prints all over the glass, all over. It's just been kissing your glass. There's 1,000 kiss marks. It's kind of funny. And it's kind of fun to come home to when you're gone for a few days. But it'll also work on the rock, and it'll work on the sand. It'll grab mouthfuls. It doesn't like lift the sand, but it's like nibbling on the surface of the sand. So those are a couple that you could use. Lance says, what is the best budget lighting in your opinion? Oh, man. I'm not a budget kind of guy. I buy high-end, or as much as I can afford high-end, because I like high quality. And so, like, for example, the Anemone Cube right here, that's a Radeon Gen 4 Pro. And that is a beast of a light for 60 gallons of water that the anemones have been living under for some time now. That light right there is about, I think it's $749. So it's a lot of money. My friend Dwayne, who I talk about on this channel quite a bit because I talk with him all the time, and he's a reef keeper in Seattle. He has a gorgeous SPS reef tank that he has used the Chinese black boxes, which are probably $100 a piece. And he had 3 or 4 of them across his tank. And he ran all the channels at 100% every single day. And every single year, he would take the entire black box apart, and he would remove every single LED diode and put a new one on, soldering them on one by one till he replaced every last one of them. And then he put that light back on the tank, and he got the next one down and replaced all of those. So every single year, he was unsoldering and soldering in new LEDs. So they really weren't $100 lights anymore because they had to keep buying more LEDs and do all that work. And he spent a lot of time doing it for many, many years. And he had a gorgeous tank. And people are like, wow, I can't believe you're growing under those cheap lights. He says, well, yeah, they were cheap initially, but I keep spending money to keep them running. And he ran them at 100%. None of this dialing it in or running it, 50% blue and 10% white. Everything was 100%, which is crazy, but his results proved itself. But he also decided after all those years of soldering, he's sick of it, and he bought himself some Radeons. Now, one way to save some money is to buy used Radeons from someone that is getting out of the hobby or has upgraded to newer ones, and you can get the used ones for less money. And that can save some money. Okay, Mr. Reef Buster says, could you discuss how to revive a neglected reef tank and what steps should be taken? Yeah, actually I can. When it comes to reviving a tank that's been neglected, the first thing you're going to do is clean, clean, clean. And I mean everything gets cleaned. You remove every single thing you can remove. So I would start from the top, and I would wipe down the entire surface of the rim of the tank and check all the crevices, make sure everything looks okay and that the tank's going to hold up. And then I work my way down the walls, and I would razor blade all the glass on all 4 sides. I would remove the power heads, soak them in acid, get them completely clean, get them reinstalled. I would look at the sand, depending how neglected, what's the situation. But if the sand's okay, leave it alone. If it's a nightmare, you might have to remove the sand and wash it and replace it. You're going to test everything, and you're going to dial things back in the way they were supposed to be. So here's the thing. I had this epiphany at the end of a super long live stream about a month ago. And I don't know that everyone heard it because it was the very end of that was like a 2.5-hour live stream. It's crazy long. And I think it was in the last 15 minutes I shared this fantastic piece of advice. And I thought, wow, what a waste. I bet no one heard it. So anyway, it's still rattling around in my head. So I'm going to reiterate it because the aquarium is our hobby. We love it. But we shouldn't treat it like a hobby because there's life involved. If you had a dog or a cat or a hamster or anything else, you would put a lot of energy into making sure the animal's safe. But for some reason with aquariums, we tend to think of them as something a little bit more disposable, and that really shouldn't be the case. So you buy a fish, you obviously want the fish to live. You buy a coral, you want the coral to live. But then things go wrong because of, we mentioned neglect before, or just bad luck. You know, you do need good luck in this hobby too. But sometimes bad luck just takes over, Murphy strikes, and you have to just sit there and pick up the pieces and rebuild. But at the same time, there's some people that just will say, well, I haven't tested in this long. And I'm just like, why? You have the kits. Use your kits. And like, yeah, well, you know, my tank looks fine. Well, it does look fine until it falls apart. And if you're using testing, you'll know in advance before it collapses. You can steer it back on track before it slams into the iceberg, right? And when I was comparing a hobbyist versus a public aquarium, public aquariums have a big exhibit, and then they have a person that's being paid by the hour to take care of that exhibit. Your tank isn't getting paid by the hour. You're taking care of it because it's your tank. But maybe your mentality should be a little bit like an employee. I have to test my water today. That's why I'm getting paid. That's how you have to look at it. And you know, you could find some ways to justify that, like, well, if I do a good job and I take good care of my reef, I'll have frags I can sell to make money. So if you're making some money that way, the hard work was worth it, right? It's not just, oh, I reached in and grabbed something and made $100. You know, so maybe you can find that way to tell yourself, I need to test. But I do think we should kind of look at our aquarium as a job that has responsibilities that we are required. Our husbandry for that tank is going to require effort. So it is a little bit more than just a hobby in that regard. We should step up our game. We should work a little harder, maintain our husbandry, take care of my stuff, and let it thrive rather than survive. So that's kind of my big epiphany. I hope that came across to you guys in the right tone and you don't get offended, because it really is important that we kind of reevaluate how we're doing. Just think about every single year, right around January 1st, people make all these promises. This year I'm going to do things better. It's the same thing with our reef tanks. You should always look at your tank and see what you can do to make it better than what it is now. And part of that is cleaning everything. And I know that's the non-glamorous part. Water changes, no fun. Water testing, no fun. Cleaning, no fun. But when you first set up your tank, when you were building it, you were super excited, you spent a bunch of money, you bought a lot of stuff, and you put it all together and it was gorgeous and you loved it. And similar to buying a new car, you clean it every single week and you vacuum the hell out of it and you want it to be all perfect. And then 6 months in, you're eating a burger and it drips on the seatbelt going across your chest, and you're like, oh, whatever. And you just kind of let it kind of go to crap. And then when it's time to sell that truck, you spend car, you spend a lot of money and time, or especially time, cleaning it from end to end so you can sell it. And you're like, wow, this is actually a nice car. Why am I selling it? And that same mentality, if you're really cleaning your tank and your tank is pretty, you're going to enjoy it so much more, and you'll be less prone to neglect it. So, you know, here's a pretty tank. I see the lights have changed a little bit in coloration. The foreground is bluish because that metal halide switched to 20K. And the two lights behind her are still in 10K mode. All right. Rogue Aquarium says, Tammy's Reef video part 2. Yeah, that's coming this month. And then Hot Ashes asks, why do some people still have to dose calcium and magnesium even when using a calcium reactor? The reason that you're dosing magnesium is because there's no magnesium in a calcium reactor. So that one is standalone, and that is something you would add. When it comes to calcium, calcium should already be coming out of the calcium reactor. You have alkalinity coming out and you have calcium coming out. And those two numbers should be maintained by the reactor with no problem whatsoever. Thank you, Andrea. So everyone, let me take a quick commercial here, if I can find my stuff, and encourage you or ask you to join Club Melevsreef. Let me turn everything on. There's all the things I want. There's a group on Facebook. If you're not a Facebook user, you're missing out. But you know, that's your own personal choice, and I get it. You don't like Zuckerberg, so be it. But we have a great group. We're coming up on 5,000 members, and we encourage everyone to come there to get answers to their questions. And you know, we really do enjoy helping you be successful with your tank. And so I know you come to this channel looking for answers, and I try to make videos that are educational that will help you succeed in various facets. But I can't answer every single question every single week. There's no way. So instead, we've created this group where you can not only ask questions, you can post pictures and videos of what's going on. You can find out what is that thing in your tank. You know, we have this great group. And the group was designed specifically to help people that are new to the hobby, as well as people who have been in the hobby a long time. And so you'll see a nice wide diversity of brand new people to people who have been around just as long as I have. And we're all answering questions, whether it's fish disease, which I know nothing about, or it's coral care, or it's equipment, or it's new products, or it's livestock choices. Great group for that. And the group was designed specifically. So if you're not a friendly person, don't even join. Let me just take this off the screen so you don't go there. Let me get rid of that too. And let me get rid of this too. We won't get, no, I'm joking. We really are a great group of people. And the thing I tell people is if you see the same question coming up over and over and it bothers you, just keep scrolling. You don't have to even complain. You don't have to say, you know, oh, another time someone asked if this is Neptasia. All of us at one point said, what is that thing? So that's why there's a group where you can answer it. And of course, my website, melevsreef.com, has the information you need so that you can easily look up all the different critters. If you log the website and you look at it, there's critter ID. Matter of fact, we'll just go there right quick. Let me open up a thing here. New window, and we'll jump to melevsreef. I don't use this feature nearly enough. So we're going to switch to that. Here we are. You know, I did this the other day. Oh, there's a thing down here, I think, somewhere. Let me see if I can get to this really quick. I can't see it. I got to move this over. And I got to hide this because it's in my way now. I'll move it down here. So zoom. Yeah, there we go. So here you are on the website. And if you, that's all my personal stuff up there. How do I get to this? I guess I need to make this larger. There we go. So here's critter ID, and here are all the different critters you can go to. And if you're wondering what kind of pest I have, you would just go to that spot. Stop. I got to move this thing off my screen too. It's in my way. All right. I'm sorry, guys. Here we go. Pests. So we click there, and then here are a variety of different pests that you may encounter in your tank. And you can look and see if it looks like something that you're dealing with in your aquarium. And then if you see it and you're like, oh, yeah, what the heck is this giant thing? You click the link, and you'll get a little bit of information about what it is and how you could remove it. And if there's extra pictures, they'll be included. So that's why I created Critter ID a very long time ago. It's been helping hobbyists around the world for a super long time. And this is just the pest section. And I also try to add predators that will devour pests. So like the camelback shrimp eats acro-eating flatworms if they're not in your display tank. So that is a critter you could use to eat them. But basically, it's a shrimp that you would have to take the coral out of your display tank and put it in a hospital tank with these camelback shrimp, and they will eat all of the acro-eating flatworms off of it within 30 minutes. And after 30 minutes, put the coral back in your tank immediately before these shrimp eat the coral itself. You have a 30-minute window. It was a brilliant idea. So you got that. And then, you know, if you're wanting to know about different algae, you can go to Critter ID again, and you can see the different types of algae. And I put Cyanobacteria in there because everyone always thinks it's an algae, and it is called the blue-green algae of the hobby. So I always recommend Critter ID for looking things up. And anytime you have a question about anything, you can always go to your browser, and you can type in Cyanobacteria, Melev, and let Google find you anything I've ever said about that topic. So any question you have, put the word Melev on there and stick it out there. Okay? I hope that helps you guys. All right, let me get back on my screen. Ha! Was that good? Was that little tour helpful? Hide this because I don't need it. I don't need my emails right now. All right, let me see what other questions I've ignored here because I was busy doing this. Alrighty, Hot Ashes says, what's the best solution for people that are colorblind when it comes to testing using titration kits? Hannah was the initial choice. Are there any other options? Hannah is the big popular choice right now. It is the one that we use. Let me turn this stuff off the screen. It's bugging me. So we'll turn that off, and we'll turn this up. Turn this on. Get this. I have too many things turned on. I really would love a secondary person to help. Stop! Go away. What else is on here? Okay, got it. Back to normal. Hannah is one method that you can use to measure things and get a digital readout, so you don't have to worry about colors because you're colorblind. A digital refractometer is another one where you drip on, and that one, there's Milwaukee. It's been around for at least a decade. And then Hannah just came out with one as well that came out. As a matter of fact, I have the newest one that I actually like. This is the Hannah as well, I think. I think everything I own is Hannah these days. So this one here is a nice tester that you hit the on button and you put it in the water and just hold it there, and it'll tell you the reading right on your screen in either specific gravity or in PPT. So that's a nice one, and it's digital. So again, you're not dealing with colors. But there are going to be certain tests that you just don't have that choice, and you're going to have to maybe try different brands until you find a brand that works for your eyes. That can be a challenge. You know, it sucks to be colorblind. I'm sure that must make you fun on the roads when it's coming up to a red light. All right. Let's see. Nick says he currently has a Lieutenant Tang. You know, I've seen that name used a couple times lately. I'm not familiar with which Tang that is specifically, but he's asking, I'd like to add a purple or a yellow Tang or a coal. Is there any tips to lessen the aggression? One of my tricks when it comes to reducing aggression in a display tank is to use the Peacemaker. And the Peacemaker is an acrylic box that I make with a bunch of holes in it, and you set it in the tank, put the Tang in, the new fish in there, and it stays in there for 3 days where all the fish can see it, but nobody can touch it. So you don't have to worry about any kind of fighting or squabbling. And after 3 days, you can then pour the fish into the reef with the rest of your livestock and essentially not deal with any fighting. And I've been doing that method since 2011 with any new fish I get, and it's been a breeze. Now, does that mean you can put any kind of fish in your tank, even the kinds that are super crazy aggressive? Thank you. That type of Tang reminds me of another one, like orange shoulder or something like that. But yeah, thank you very much. If you got like a Sohal Tang, they're really aggressive. I mean, super aggressive. And there's other fish that are like that are just too rough. And so even with a Peacemaker, there's no guarantee that would work out. One of the tricks to combining fish together that may not tolerate each other brand new is to remove all the fish from the aquarium at once, put them in a timeout like in a Rubbermaid vat for a while, and then rearrange the rockwork in your tank and then put them all in the tank at once again. And that way no one has territory they can call their own, and they kind of work it out. That's one method that works when you're trying to add a new fish to an existing setup that's been established for a long time. But the Peacemaker has been really good for me, and that's the one I recommend to people just because it's easy. You know, you just hang it in the tank, put your fish in there, and you can feed the fish, and then you can feed the reef, and everyone's getting a meal at the same time. But those guys are in a box with 5 walls with holes, so flow is going through it, and they can see each other. People have done the same using egg crate. They make an egg crate cage, which, you know, it works. It's not as easy to look through. Definitely a less expensive option, but I do like the Peacemaker. All right. Oh, and then, you know, back to the color reagents. I didn't mention, how did I not mention the Trident, which is testing alkaline, calcium, and magnesium automatically, and you don't have to look at anything but a graph on your infusion. That's super nice. And Alcatronic does measuring, and ReefBot does measuring, where you have all the information on your smart device, your smartphone. So those are some of the ones on the market. MindStream has been in the works forever. So at some point that's going to come to market, right? And so there are more options besides buying API, Saliford, Elos, Nios, Red Sea. So it's just going to be a matter of finding something that you like. All right. Rogue Aquariums, I tried the ice cap salinity pen and it didn't work well for me. So that's why I'm very happy with the new one I got from Hannah. So I do recommend this one. Might have got a bad one, don't know. But I was not happy with it, and I actually threw it away. Mike Bowe says, what brand of ball valve do you recommend? I love the John Fisher ball valves. They are amazing. And they're a gray body fitting that resembles Schedule 80, but it's not Schedule 80. It's Schedule 40. And the valve itself, the handle is orange, and it's super easy to turn. And when you get a ball valve from Home Depot, it's going to be red. If you get it from Lowe's, it's blue. And those get hard to twist. You know, they just freeze into a certain position. So the John Fisher valves are really, really nice. And I'm sure BRS has another type of brand available too that you might like. But yeah, we're focusing on finding better plumbing parts is always a nice thing to do. You can go to savco.com. You can go to BRS, you can go to flexpvc.com, and there's a few other websites that have all kinds of choices. But yeah, the JF valves are really, really nice. There's also a George Fisher, I think, as well, which is slightly different than the first one. It costs more, but I do like the orange-handled ones a lot. That's what I have on a lot of valves in my tank. Alrighty. Mermaid's Reef says that she has her child helping her with the color change. So apparently the child can see the color better than she can. That's a nice solution. I didn't think of that. Grab another person's eyeballs. Great tip. That's a good one. All right, guys, look, we don't need to drag this one out into a big, long stream. I think we should just kind of wrap it up. I do want to recommend, of course, that you test your water. I talked about it earlier today. I hope you're motivated to do that. I need to test the water in all of my tanks and make sure everything's good. And I got to get some work done. I got to build a new sump. And so I've got to do that today or this whole weekend. And, you know, I do want to do a quick thank you to all of you that buy things from our website. I do appreciate it. It does help me pay the bills. It helps me pay the electric bill that we talked about and feed Spock, which is always important. We'll throw the reef back on here for a second before we go away. I also want to let you guys know that I'm always trying to answer questions online via email. I get texts, I get chats, I get messages, and I'm always trying to answer you. If I miss you, it's not intentional. I'm usually juggling 10 people at once. I spent 2 days ago, I spent the entire afternoon on the phone with everyone and couldn't get any work done at all because I was busy answering one phone call after another. And it was just kind of that was my Thursday. So I realize you've got a lot of options when it comes to getting help online. And I'm always trying to help. If I can't help you, definitely Google your question. I mean, I have some people ask me very specific questions like, where does this O-ring go on the somatic skimmer? And because I did a product review about the somatic skimmer a year and a half ago, and sometimes you're going to have to go to the manufacturer to get the help for the actual item like that. That's very specific. That's not necessarily a melevsreef question. But, you know, if I can answer a question, I will. If I can point you to the right direction, I will as well. I saw someone, I want to mention this. You know, we talked about the group earlier, Club Melevsreef. Someone posted a question the other day about their thermostat in their house and how someone had changed the setting and they couldn't adjust it and the tank got too hot. And they were very concerned about the livestock because they were going to go on vacation. And a couple of people answered questions, and then all of a sudden the thread just vanished. And I saw the thread before it vanished. I was actually Googling that exact thermostat as the conversation was kind of fizzling out really quick. And I found the thermostat with the instruction manual online. And so I sent that woman a private message with the link to that thermostat. I said, if this is the same model you have, maybe this manual will help you. And she said, I just felt like I asked a dumb question. I deleted it because I don't want you to ever feel embarrassed when you have a question about something. And I don't feel you should have the need to delete your conversations in the club because it always helps somebody else that's reading along. There's always silent readers, the lurkers that are there. They're always listening. And so whenever you're typing to people and you're answering John, there's probably 25 more people reading along quietly that are learning through osmosis. So don't kill the conversation necessarily. Let it happen. Let us help you. And hopefully you'll be able to overcome whatever the issue is that's arisen and make your tank do even better than before. So I'm going to wrap up on that. I hope that you guys have a great weekend. If you get everything measured on your tanks, I definitely would love to see you post your results. You can do it on Instagram. And if you do, make sure it's public, not to your friends only, so that way I can see it. And you can do @melevsreef so I can check it out. And if you are on Club Melevsreef, you can post your results there. If you have questions about things you're dosing, ask your questions there and we'll help you out. Other than that, guys, I hope you have a great weekend, and I should see you next Saturday. Bye.